Good morning. Glad to be back. And we will continue our journey. Ayin Beis, reviewing the conclusion. We're at the bottom of page 1399. And we've begun on page 1398, previous classes, the main focus in the Makabel, the recipient energy, is in contrast to Mashpia, Mashpia, like the sun would be an Mashpia. Makabel in the spheres is Malchus. It doesn't have anything of its own. It receives. And that we learn there are three levels there in Makabel, which correspond to the three examples of moonlight, a luminous or glowing stone, Evan Tev, and the third, Hariyah, eyesight, the light of the eye, the sight of the eye. And that corresponded, as we learned earlier, with the three levels in Torah, Mikra, Mishnah, and Talmud, which we've reviewed quite a few times, so I'm not going to go back to that. But the general focus is Torah, as we began learning on page 1350, that the interface, Mamayla Lamata, the Amshacha Mamayla Lamata, in contrast to Mamata Lamayla Tefillah, which was basically the 550 pages before that. So essentially, the picture is that there's the interface from God and existence, from the divine, from the transcendent and the immanent, from the divine beyond existence with the divine within existence, that there are two ways those connect, either from the top, bottom up or top down. With all the overlaps that we've learned, and each one has both of them included, it's not mutually exclusive. So we're in general right now in the Mamayla Mata of Torah. Torah is a light that was given to us to illuminate our lives and to give us direction and guidance in a dark world, to put it simply and briefly. But in that itself, it's a process, because we don't just want to shine light in this world, we want to transform this world. We want to turn it into a home for God, a permanent one. And as such, it's more than just shining a light in the dark. You want to be able to transform that darkness. And that's where it gets much more complex, because how do you transform a world that initially is antithetical to God, or at least concealed with God with intent? There's Mamata approach, as I just mentioned, which we learned earlier. There's the Mamayla Lamata approach, Torah, and we actually have both. Both are at our disposal, both methods, and they come together and they complement each other and they feed each other, and we'll learn as we go along. Torah feeds Tefillah, Tefillah feeds Torah. When I say feeds, one enhances the other, one prepares for the other, and each one contributes something the other doesn't have completely. And as such, we'll have a full picture of a complete interface, complete fusion and integration of Elokus in our existence. That's an overall thing to always keep in mind as a central theme. The specifics, as I mentioned, is that now we're talking in Hamshacha Mamayla Lamata, three levels. Mikra, Mishnah, and Talmud are very captured very well, because Mikra is pure, is relatively speaking, is much more pure Elokus with less human effort, or you can say human integration, because we don't understand. Mikra is not really understandable. It's a story form. It's a narrative. Mikra Nasiya. The mitzvahs there are very brief, without explanations and details. In Mishnah, it becomes more explained, and therefore level of Yetzirah. And in Talmud is actually our effort, the effort when we don't have the clarity to achieve clarity. With the first two being compared to the moonlight, meaning Talmud is moonlight. I should go the other way around. Talmud is moonlight. Mishnah is like the luminous stone. But he never explicitly says that Mikra is like eyesight. And I've explained a number of reasons why that's the case. But regardless, back to the theme, even before Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, was it to understand Torah, he said, and Ner Mitzvah, and Ner Hashish Mesadam. Whereas you see in all of them, you have the concept of bringing light into the world, a candle. or Teireh, light, the candle of the neshama, the candle of the mitzvah, which we'll get back to as well. So where are we now? At the bottom of page 1398, as I said, it began, he says, the example of Er Hariyah, the light of eyesight. Where here we have the unique paradox, and we'll explain in a moment the difference between that and the other two, meaning the moon and the stone, is that on one hand, the eye is a created entity by God to see. It's not incidental. That's exactly why we have an eye. It's not like the ears. It's not like smell. It's not like taste, touch. It's the ability to see. You actually can see. What do we see today? We see the physical world. The goal is to see godliness, to see it with the same clarity and the same reverence as we see Gashmis. With all the psukim that he brought, that we'll see it without any garments, without any concealments. Today, we have the capacity to see directly like that. That's why it says, God says, you cannot see me and live. So we have filters through which we see. But the ultimate goal is to actually see. But on the other hand, when you look at eyesight, practical eyesight, you cannot see on your own in the dark without an outside light. That is siyua, as he calls it. So on one hand, you must have a siyua, because the eye does not shine in the dark. It's not like the moon that receives from the sun and then it shines. The reflection of the sunlight or its own light, the luminous stone absorbs. Right now, the stone is a shining stone. Yes, it's true that it cannot illuminate the dark, but it shines in the dark, as we learned. The eye has the unique ability to actually see. And as such, it's on one hand, it's makabel. Which part of it is the makabel? As the eye is the klei ha'ayin, as the eye manifests in the physical faculty of seeing. So when it's in the klei ayin, it has the limit of not seeing in the dark and also seeing only that far. We said 50, 60 mil. On the other hand, the etzem koyach hariyah doesn't have the limitation. You don't call that an makabel. Because there, the etzem koyach hariyah, which means the actual faculty of sight, doesn't have any limits. And as such, he says, so the it is, makabel is only as it's mislabish in the ayin, in the eye. Said that explicitly at the bottom of 1398. Why? Because it's a meir be'etzem. So the eye has both aspects to it. Obviously, today we don't have access to that etzem koyach hariyah, or we have access to it, but it doesn't manifest in the full sense. But there is that level that remains so-called behind the scenes, etzem koyach hariyah. And that etzem koyach hariyah, as he explained on page 1399, all the way to the bottom where we're up to, doesn't have the limits of not seeing in the dark, or only seeing a certain distance, because it could see sefer elamat sefer, as he said, not any limitations. Etzem koyach hariyah. And why is that the case? Because that's how it was created, to be an etzem meir. So in a way, it's a moir, but it's not a moir today. It's only a moir in potential, in its so-called source, in the etzem, the core source, as it is embedded in the soul. Okay, just to sum up, what else we learned? So air mispashit, there's limits as the air extends and expresses itself, but etzem koyach hariyah be'etzem ein shum hagbala. And then the final piece was a parenthesis to contrast it with the moon. The levana be'etzem is not a light. It's a moyer, but as we learned, it's a moyer that's concealed. But it's etzem choshech. With the eye, it's concealed and it needs an outside light only when the light comes down and within the eye. But the etzem koyach hariyah is an illuminated state. Obviously in potential, not in actuality, but whereas the moon always means a koyach hariyah. The reason it's called a moyer is because it's the power of God to conceal, which is also a luminary, but it's a luminary that's a koyach hahelam, as he said. He be'etzem uhusa b'chinas makabel. Er is not etzem uhusa makabel. Only in its mispashtus, only in its expression, its extension, it's a makabel. but in its core, it's not called a makabel. So therefore, the moon is an makabel mamish, which means it radiates and reflects the light of the sun. Even if it's the moon's light, even if it now has become moonlight, that's because the sun has triggered it and awakens and stimulates it. And the example he gives is for a woman. She herself has the power to give birth. However, it requires the seed of the male to stimulate it. Just a second. I want to just see something. Okay. It's like the moon, it's a koyach hanelam. So just like the moon needs the sun to get its light shining, same thing with the woman. Mashenken ish, as we explained, he himself has that birth, that power of koyach elad. In other words, he can initiate. As I explained, lahilid ma'asme does not mean he can give birth without a woman. It means he can initiate and generate, which is what he does when he emits seed. And that tipus adchar me'er koyach elad ba'isha, because mipnei shu b'chinas koyach mashpia be'etzem. So in this, the example, the mashpia be like the sun, the male. The female here is like makabel. Aval be'er hariyah, harigam kamoshu b'chemer ha'ayin ein b'chinas er makabel. Even the way it's in the chemer ha'ayin, in the very body of the eye, because it itself sees. No, but it needs an outside light. With a woman, it's not like that. It's not she gives birth to, she needs the seed. It's not just an incidental thing. Why is that the case? Because be'etzem hu b'chinas er ha'meir, and that's why even when it extends, like we said, it's only a siyua, but it itself sees. So 2 points here. Number one, the etzem koyach is not a makabel, and even when it is a makabel, meaning as it manifests in the eye, the physical eye, it itself sees, because it's fundamentally rooted in that place. And that's where we stopped in the mashal. Now going to apply this to, so how does this play itself out in our lives? How is it in the context of who is the ayin in Veda, so to speak? So he's going to explain, these are the leaders who guide us with Torah. This is the siyua that allows us to be able to see in simple terms, as much as your neshama has the capacity to learn Torah and to find clarity, Torah, but all of us need education. We need teachers. We need leaders. So even though Korach said, the entire community are holy, he asked, why do you lift yourself up higher? We see, we see that as much as we have a divine soul and access, but today especially, we need an outside light to awaken us, to ignite us, to direct us, to guide us, to teach us. That's in simple Balbatish language. But now he's going to explain it with different Maimorei Chazal. And this will lead us into all the different forces in life that support, that help us find direction in this world. So going back to the interface theme, the interface is that Torah provides light to illuminate the path in this dark world. But that's the light that it provides in order to get the neshama ignited, so to speak, and the neshama illuminated. But it's not just Torah. We know there's Mer Mitzvah. And more than that, they're leaders and teachers. And we'll learn about the Malachim, who are part of the process, the Malachim in the Bria and Yetzirah, the higher worlds, that also support and are called Einayim, eyes. So now he's going to give you a long explanation in how Einayim plays itself out in Torah, in Torah literature, if you wish, and in the process of how this actually is implemented. And here really comes down to all the support we get and all the strength we get to find clarity, to find in other words, to create an interface between God and existence. That's what is essentially going to be now the theme for quite a while, until he gets back to Eir Hariyah, which will be on page 1352 and 1364. I'm sorry, no, that's a mistake. That's before. That's what we learned earlier. We're gonna get back to Riyah in let me tell you where exactly. So I'll just give you the amount of the pages that we're discussing now. Get a little lay of the land. Let's see here. Yeah. On page 1454, and then again 462, he's going to return to Eir HaRiyah before he gets back to Ner Mitzvah B'Teireh. So if you want to like document, so to speak, the coordinates of this journey here in the end of Ayin Beis, here going forward from here till page 1454. So we're talking about a good 50 pages now. So to give and take, that's going to be addressing what is Eir HaRiyah in our Avodah, in the whole process of Seder Shtalshelus, in context of Torah, Neshama. Neshama we know has light in it. Ner Hashem Neshama, it's a candle. On the other hand, Torah illuminates the Neshama. So is the Neshama higher than Torah? Is the Torah higher than the Neshama? This all is going to be understood with these two dimensions in Eir HaRiyah. That the way the Riyah comes into the Chomer Ayin, the Klei Ayin, the Kli, there it has limitations and it needs siyua. Or namely the Torah, the light of the Torah and the light of our leaders and teachers. On the other hand, the Neshama itself sees. It's not just coming from the light. The light is just a siyua. To the point that the Neshama itself will be mashpia into Torah. So not only will it see on its own, the eyes, our eyes will see like the sun and the moon, but more will actually illuminate Torah and elevate even Torah. And that's going to be the so-called bigger picture of how the Neshamas and Torah interact with each other. And all this is the next 50 pages and more. I'm not going through everything. We'll go through as we learn it. Then on 1454, he returns to Eir HaRiyah. That's good because he keeps connecting it. It's not, we don't have to speculate. Mekol Zeh Yuvan HaMoshel. And then finally, the last time we'll discuss Eir HaRiyah will be on 1462. It's a few more pages after that, 8 more pages. Yeah, 1462, he'll conclude the Eir HaRiyah, and then on page 1463, and Ner Mitzvah V'Teireh. So you'll see this is how it's all connecting. So if you want to go 1350 all the way till the end of the Hashech, basically say it starts with Teireh and Ner Mitzvah and Ner Hashem Nishma. Explains it according to the Maimer Hamagbil that we learned at length in Teireh and the Mittler Rebbe is long Maimer. He begins to explain it with Eir HaRiyah, the light of the eye. That in turn brings us to the other two, Eir Makabel, the moonlight, and the luminous stone. Those three correspond to Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud. Explains their connection first to Talmud in Bria, to the moonlight, and Mishnah Yitzirah to the luminous stone, and then now comes back to the light of the eyesight. This will now go all the way till page 1462. Then he returns back to Ner Mitzvah B'Teireh. All this is in Hamshach Ayin Beis. And that's where he does not end the whole topic. That's why we need the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, to help clarify what would be the conclusion. But there is a structure here that's quite elaborate, and that will go to Ner Mitzvah B'Teireh, explain the role of the neshama as it affects the animal soul, and with the unity that it introduces, the lower unity, the higher unity, the joining of both, and that's where the Hamshach Ayin Beis will conclude, and that's where we lie in the other Maimarim that will explain that with that we can go back and understand Ner Mitzvah and Teireh. So when you combine everything what we learned here in Ayin Beis, plus those Maimarim, plus the Maimer Ve'inenu Me'iris, we can piece together, as I've said, and that's the whole purpose of learning now, piece together how Ayin Beis would have most likely developed. Obviously, with the caveat that we don't know exactly what the Rebbe Rashab would have focused on, what would he have explained, what would he have added, etc. But more or less, you could get a picture of answered questions and also the conclusion of the themes, and most importantly, the theme of Teireh in contrast to Tefillah, Mamata L'mayla, that he for sure doesn't get back to. As I said, he doesn't even get back to understanding Teireh. and their mitzvah. But we will go over all of that. The exact plan is to go over all the pieces I just laid out, and doing it backwards, so to speak, as the Hemshech Ayin Beis develops, and like go retrace the steps all the way back to the original topics, all the way back to the beginning of the Hemshech. And with God's help and Siyua, I'm sure we'll be able to really piece together this powerful puzzle. Okay, so that's a little overview, plus explaining where we're at. So now at the bottom of 1399. Someone wants to ask anything, feel free. And then I will begin learning at the bottom of 1399. So Aleph Shin Tzadik Test 1399, the bottom paragraph is now going to explain what is Koyach HaRiyah or Riyah Sa'ayin. Riyah, how's that? What is that in the context of Judaism, so to speak, and Torah and mitzvahs and so on? Are avoided. Pages can be found if you want to follow along at ayinbeis.com. V'hinei yedua. And now it's known. The Sanhedrin nikra Einei Ha'eda. Sanhedrin, which was the central court of law, the time of the temple, the time of Moshe Rabbeinu already. But the Sanhedrin was at the end of the second temple. So Sanhedrin was a central court. Today we have mini courts, so a Beis Din of 3, of 7. Sanhedrin, the full Sanhedrin was 71 scholars and sages, always an odd number, so there's never a hung court. And they're called Einei Ha'eda. Einei, the eyes of the people. Eda is the community, the nation. U'kameshe kosav. The Ime Einei Ha'eda nasas adavar. He brings the actual verse. Where do we get the word Einei Ha'eda? Ime Einei Ha'eda nasas adavar. If the Einei Ha'eda, which means the leaders, establish this and this law, the Isha b'Zoyar. So there you have the comparison. What is Einayim among us? It's our leaders, our scholars, our rabbis, our rabbanim, poskim, Sanhedrin. Now, what does he say in Zoyar? Interesting Zoyar. We learned this already back a few years ago, but we're learning it now in a fresh context. So it says in Zohar, Vayakel Dafresh Yutches Amar Aleph. So page 218a. Kamod the kol shaifa gufa. Shaifa are all the channels, all the pathways of the body. Lo azlin ela boset einin. They don't travel. They don't. You can't. They all like azl is from the word like halicha. They don't manifest. Only b'sboset einin. Only follow the eyes. The einin inhun. Who are the einin? Who are the eyes? Inhun manhaga dechol gufa. They are the manhigim, the leaders, the guides of the entire body. In other words, the body cannot move anywhere without eyes. You need eyes to see. If you want to go from here to there, we'll say go, not just with your mind, not just with your whole being. So the Cholak, he says, kol shaifa gufa, follow the eyes. You need eyes to guide you. So essentially, eyes are like our guide. And who are they? These are the kings, Malchim, the kings, the leaders, the Sanhedrin. And all those that lead, that shalit, that guide, that have authority, everything follows them. They're the ones. In other words, when we have a question, we want to know where to go. Like, let's say the Jews were in the Midbar, in the wilderness. So who guided, who led them? Was Moshe Rabbeinu. And the same thing in general. That's what a leader is. A true leader is a guide. Is a person who has clarity, like the eyes, that can see ahead, and that can say, this is the right path to go. This is not the right path to go. Yeah, very practical. That's what the Zohar says. The Zohar takes Einei Ha'eda and really develops it into a very specific way. You say the eyes of the nation. I mean, obviously, we can understand from that it means guides. But the Zohar spells it out literally and explicitly. V'hainu, the Rebbe Rashab now is explaining, Shachachamim, the wise ones, the sages, the eyes of the nation, Heim haMeirim l'chol ha'eda, they illuminate, they shine for the entire people, for the entire community. V'kulan azlan abasrayu, quoting this line of the Zayah. And kulan azlan, everyone follows. Abasayu, following them, meaning those eyes, those guys, those visionaries. You don't see that word works very well. Vision, the visionary. With the light and of their light and their light and their revelation that they provide as eyes. And I was going to give a practical example. A general example is that you go to a wise person for guidance. You go to a Rav for halacha, to know you don't have clarity. A given area is something kosher, not kosher. Two people have vikuach, a sichsor, they have a disagreement. To clarify, to help provide a direction, what is right, what is wrong. But he says specifically, we know the Chachamim, Zeosha Chachamim, we find, Chacham here he's referring to the Chachamim of the time of Shas, not just in general, all wise people. Chacham tiknu birchas hamitzvahs. One of the takonas of Divrei Sofrim, remember we also called Chacham Divrei Sofrim earlier, but here the focus is not on Sofrim, because there it was about reaching even deeper into the author's intentions. But the Chachamim, there's a takana, we call takonas Divrei Sofrim, or the Rabban, mitzvah. Rabban is another name for Chachamim. One of the things they were misaken, 7 general laws of the Rabban, like Erevin, one of them is Brichas HaMitzvahs. In the Torah, the Torah does not tell us to make a bracha on every piece of food. Let's say Shahakal Niyah B'dvar, or Brichas HaNenin, or other brachas that we say. The Chachamim were misaken Brichas HaMitzvahs. Asher Kedushanu B'mitzvahs V'tzivanu. You're not going to find those words in the written Torah. That's something from the Chachamim. And of course, they derive it from different verses to acknowledge, obviously, Hashem, they blessed us with either that mitzvah or here it's calling Birchas HaMitzvahs, not Birchas HaNenin, meaning, even though I mentioned Shahakel, that's also part of the Takana, but he's talking about Birchas HaMitzvahs. Like when you make a bracha on tefillin or talis or a bracha on lighting candles, etc. So what's the connection? What's the connection? Why dafka the Chachamim misaken brachas? Because he's going to explain the Chacham provide light, and a bracha is the concept of light. Now, we skipped this earlier, but when we spoke earlier about the Avodah, the difference between Yetzirah and Bria, he said the mile of Yetzirah, if you you may remember, is Gilui. Kavon is Gilui. And he said that's the difference between Kodesh and Baruch. Kodesh is more removed and more transcendent, more concealed, like Mach and Eagle, the Igulim. Whereas Baruch is a bracha v'amshacha, brings it down, draws it down in a revealed way. So he's saying now that in a bracha liyas b'chinas gilui. What is a bracha? There should be a gilui. The context of mitzvahs, you do a mitzvah, obviously you're drawing down godliness, whether it's in tefillin or lighting a candle or whatever the mitzvah may be. However, the bracha reveals it in a very direct way. Baruch Hashem Elikei Yisrael min ha'elam v'ad ha'elam. So there's a verse that says, and the Chassidus has a long maimer, the Alter Rebbe has a maimer called Lahavin in Habrachas, where in the beginning of Teireh, the Mitzvah Tzaddik has a whole elaboration. But what the expression is, Baruch Hashem Elikei Yisrael min ha'elam v'ad ha'elam. What does that mean, min ha'elam v'ad ha'elam? From the world to the world. So Chassidus explains, it means ma'alma diskasya, ma'alma disgalia. It means from the world, the hidden world, to the revealed world. That's what a bracha is. Just to elaborate before I read on, he may mention this. I don't remember if he actually mentions the whole brachas from Teireh, this line. But let me just say this to make things a little clear. You probably have heard the difference between a bracha and tefillah. Like when you go, let's say, to a tzaddik or to a rebbe, or in general, you ask someone for a blessing, or you ask them to pray for you. What's the difference? To mispal for you or to ask for a blessing? So Chassidus explains that difference in a bracha and tefillah, they're both hamshach. But one, a bracha reveals that which you already have with that already destined for you, but it's not yet revealed. So let's say, whatever reason, Rosh Hashanah, you get a blessing to be wealthy. But for whatever reason, there are some blocks or obstacles, the channels that are not allowing that bracha to manifest. So when a person gives you a blessing, they unclog those channels. But it's something you deserve. Tefillah has the power, what's called Yehi Ratzon. Even if it wasn't destined, God forbid somebody was not blessed for wealth, or God forbid somebody is has an illness. And it's possible their destiny is not to be wealthy, destiny is not to heal. A tefillah has the power to pierce heaven and draw down a new energy. Not one that's there already and waiting for you. In other words, it's like locked in the closet. You need someone to open the closet. This one is a Ratzon Chodesh. You ask Hashem, change your decree. So Chassidus explained, tefillah and bracha, each one has something the other doesn't have. A bracha is more guaranteed because it's already yours. It's just a matter of accessing. Tefillah doesn't have that. You cannot say that at tefillah, you're accessing something that's yours. There you're actually trying to generate a new ratzon, a new decree, a new plan for you, a new destiny. On the other hand, tefillah, of course, the mile of tefillah is that even if it wasn't given to you, tefillah has the ability to bring you something you wouldn't have had on your own. It's one of the reasons that Yaakov Avinu, when he was blessing, when Yosef places Menashe and Ephraim to his right and to his left, because Menashe was older, so he crossed his hands. So the question is asked, why didn't Yaakov simply give the blessing of the firstborn to Menashe? And Ephraim is the secondborn. Why did he have to cross his hands? Because he was giving him a bracha, not a tefillah. And a bracha, he knew the destiny of Ephraim was such and such. He couldn't change that. So the question was, so that's why he crossed his hands. Tefillah is a different goal. Tefillah is to pierce and achieve something that wasn't their plan. So you see from this, that bracha is that powerful. Bracha is a personification of Gili. That's why you say bracha is from Alma Diskasya to Alma Disgalia. Top of page, turn the page 1400. Elaborate a bit what bracha is. So that's why he's going to say the Chachamim or Mesakim, they establish blessings because the bracha is the inyan of Gili. So who establishes Gili? Eine Ha'eda. Those that have that clarity, those that have that vision. Behind top of page 1400. I'll stop a moment if anybody wants to ask anything. Let me just finish the sentence. Behind this means the Kamoishu B'Alma Diskasya, the way the Hamshacha, the way that the energy is in the hidden worlds, Ken Yir Hagili B'Alma Diskasya is Mina Elam Baruch Melekes Baruch. Drawing Baruch from the Hamshacha, that just Mina into the real world. Can you Gili B'Alma Diskasya? Kumashakasa B'Tera like he writes in Tera the Dibra Maskal, it's right in the beginning in Bereshis, Lahavin Inyan HaBrachas. The Maimon that begins to understand what is the Inyan of Brachas. I'll stop here and then we'll read more inside if anybody wants to ask anything. By the way, how's the clarity of the video and the audio today?
Not good. I mean, you just before you stopped for questions, you broke up for a while. We couldn't hear you for about 5 or 10 seconds. And the video quality is very scant. It's blurry, low bandwidth. So it's not really any better than the last class, whenever we could go.
Okay, we'll have to work on that. Fine. Any questions? But the audio has been pretty stable, at least?
More or less, yes.
Okay. Okay, pretty clear, but anybody wants to ask anything? No? Okay. And I was explaining this a bit more based on that mimer in Torah. He says like this, Lies, being, considering the Kol Yisrael, Hey, my minim, b'nei my minim. I'm almost sure this is a language from that mimer, or at least a paraphrase from there. That Yidden, all Jews, are believers, children of believers, with a seamless and just simple faith. In other words, without any complications. Visham is from the Torah. And this is the way we're born. It's coming from Mila. Mazlaya Chaz is an expression in the book of Daniel that they trembled. So it says they tremble. They didn't see the angels or the presence. So it says Mazlaya Chaz. Their Mazel Chaz is seeing. Their Mazel sensed it or saw it. So it affected them. So he's using an expression here that this comes from Lamaila. One second. First, I thought it's Lamaila from the level. Maybe it's Lamaila Mipchina. Maybe it's higher than Mazlaya. Let me see the. Yeah, he's saying that the Hamunin. At first, I thought he meant that it's coming from above. I correct myself. I think he's saying it's higher than Mazlaya Chazi. Mazlaya Chazi exists on a lower level that someone, even though you may not sense something, your mazel, essentially your sign in heaven, senses it and it affects you. The Amunah Pshuta is deeper than that. The Mailam Abchins Mazlaya Chazi. He says, elsewhere it says, the reason he's bringing that because Chazi is the language of Riyah. He wants to explain how the Chachamim bring us clarity of vision. So he says, Mokemachet elsewhere explains the Teikif Hamuna, he mishum the Mazlaya Chazi. So actually, he does connect the two. So that the intensity of faith is due to Mazlaya Chazi. Yeah. So one place it says it's higher than Mazlaya Chazi, another says that the intensity of Amuna is due to the fact that our senses or sees things. And what's the bracha? This is Amun of Eden, even without the Einei, Ha'eda, without the visionaries of the community. The Ein HaBracha Elias Amuna Ki'ilu Raya. And the bracha, which the Chachamim, the Einei Ha'eda established, is that this Amun just remain faith, but it should be like as if we see it. That's why he brings the parentheses, because it says that this part comes from the power of the mazel. But regardless, bracha, of course, adds to that it should be ki'ilu roya. But I am asher believe in a masla smell taxes. I should be pasha kisis and Torah.
I think I found the mimer from the Tzemach Tzedek. I just posted it. I'm not sure if it matters to you, but
this is the theme. It talks about this. Is there? Yeah, it's in Torah 3. Gracious. Probably. Okay. It's a very famous one.
Kisisa. Maybe I'd have the wrong mimer. I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you, Rabbi. You're frozen. I don't hear volume. Does anyone else hear the Rabbi?
No.
No, he's just cut off.
Yeah. Yeah, Rabbi, we can't hear you. Maybe you want to sign off and sign on again. I'll text him. Oh, he knows. I'm going to play Netanyahu's speech.
I didn't intend to come here. My country is at war, fighting for its life.
Yeah, Isaac, you have a big echo.
But after I
Trying to figure out how to do this. Oh, I know how to do it.
the lies and slanders leveled at my country by many of the speakers at this podium, I decided to come here and set the record straight. I decided to come here to speak for my people, to speak for my country, to speak for the truth. Here's the truth. Israel seeks peace. Israel yearns for peace.
That doesn't sound
Israel
like
has made peace and will make peace again.
I was just playing the Netanyahu speech at the UN while you were gone.
No, I understand. I understand. How's the connection now?
Better.
Okay, I don't know what to say. We're going to call our provider. What should I tell you? To tech problems. Let me just assure you, it's not intentional. It's not about you, it's about me, as they say. Okay, let's continue. Hopefully this will clear up. The problem is we have that are, it's called the upload speeds are very fast. Download, or the opposite. The download is fast. The upload is very slow. I don't know what the issue is. Okay. So let's go back to where we were. Does anybody have any questions? Let's start with that.
Did you record this second part?
The first part.
No, this part. I didn't hear the announcement that.
Yeah, you good point. You're right. Thank you. I'll make it now. Yeah. There you go. Good point. Okay, so let's resume. So let's just sum up in case some words were not clear. Bracha is gilui. And he goes further, because Yidden are ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim, so you could wonder what kind of gilui. They already have faith in them. So he says, Ina bracha liyasamuni ki'ilu roya. That's what the Chachamim contributed. The bracha adds, like we see practically, you can do a mitzvah. When you make a bracha, you become more aware, more conscious. It's more engaging and more involved. And he tells us to look, the Maimer Veschanon, which most likely could be the Maimer in the Kutei Torah or somewhere else. I'm not sure. I have to look that up. It's not just enough that faith, meaning when you do a mitzvah, that should be with a contemplation in your thought process. Shehu yizbarach mamala kalam v'seviv kalamin v'les asar poniminei. God fills all of existence, transcends all of existence. That's seviv. And les asar poniminei, that there's no space, there's nothing devoid of him. So it's not enough that it should just be a machshava. She'ein ze b'chinas gili. That's not a state of gili. Like he says in that Maimer. This is a straight quote from the Maimer, L'hoven inyan habrachas. Alma discussing. That's what means alma discussing. It's in your thought, but only you know about it. and it's not fully integrated into your being. Shubchin is Helam. That's a state of concealment. Doesn't extend and radiate to the Kudus Alev, piercing the core of your heart. Lias lachodim mamish, to be totally integrated, totally internalized within you. Mashegi is gilui. So what is the kavanah? That it should come from imina elam avalmi discussing shava, from thought, and the hidden should become the state of revelation in your heart, which means ulias negeya el atzmus hanefesh mamish. This is the language of the Alter Rebbe. That it should pierce, should touch you, shake you. Negeya means really, it really impact you. Is a good word. Impact. Negeya el atzmus hanefesh mamish. To the core soul mamish, kasher yosim el libay, and when he applies to his, when he really feels and applies to his heart, in other words, an emotionally resonating way, eichshu is barach mamal kalam v'sevu kalam. Not just an contemplation, it's actually you're taking it to heart. That means mina elam ela elam. That's what the bracha achieves. Now, of course, it means a bracha with kavanah, and you're saying it properly. You're not just saying lip service. So from Sabi Mimal Kalam V'Sevu Kalaman, the Illuminating is and he continues, this is all from the Maimer. And even with that, even when you achieve that level of internalizing it with the Ilu Roya, as if you're seeing it yourself, not just as an abstract theory, Lo tuchla nefesh se'es mahakil. Still, even with that, the soul cannot fully contain, as it stands as a soul inside of a physical body, with the darkness of the desires of this world. So the nefesh cannot really contain it, but the ruach and neshama, remember there's nefesh, ruach, neshama, the ruach and neshama. So you could say if the bracha doesn't achieve that it's fully integrated in the nefesh, so what's the goal? So he says, but the ruach and neshama are affected. It's causing that only the spirit, the ruach and neshama, elov yasef, will be drawn, will be gathered together toward God. The nefesh will be united with its source. So even if it doesn't have the ability to fully contain it, but the bracha has brought it into a far more integrated, far more integrated way. All this is coming to explain what a bracha is, and remember the gavana is to explain why Chachamim accomplished this bracha. Now the truth is, I'm considering whether we need to read it all, or I should sum it up. My leaning is I should read it because I think it's going to help us understand not just what a bracha is, to really understand what the einayim are, what their function is. What does it mean to see in Ruchnius? So the end is going to be, it means to perceive with as much clarity. What's the mile of Riyah over Shmiya? When you hear a story, or you hear someone describe a beautiful scene, and they describe it well, it could bring you to tears. It could bring you to joy. We all know. Someone that knows how to describe something well can make you visualize it almost as if you were there. Yet there's something, it says, there's something about seeing that is not, you can't really explain. It's not like when you see it, you understand it better. In other words, the person who shared it with you may have given you all the details. There's what Chassidus calls the word, I want to use is hisamtus. There's a certain resonating reality that happens because I saw it with my own eyes. That's why we always bring the halacha, the din, ein eid nas dayan. A witness cannot be a judge. But a judge, you could argue, the best judge would be the witness. He saw the himself. He saw the event itself. He could say, I myself saw it. So it's explained, even the chazyu, that's the lashon in Rashi and maybe even in the Gemara. Because he saw it, he no longer can have a doubt. And if he can't have a doubt, he can't hear the evidence Maybe what you saw wasn't exactly what happened. We all can see things that are not necessarily an illusion, but maybe we misunderstood what we saw. If Rahman al-Islam, we know you could have a scenario where a person says they saw someone holding I don't want to use a negative example, but holding a knife, and then a minute later you see the person is dead. So you make the connection, but you didn't actually see the step or some obstacle, or there may have been other factors involved. Maybe there were other people and you didn't see them. So your vision creates such a reality. It's hard to listen objectively when someone is saying, no, it wasn't him. So of course, a judge, a smart person, put aside his biases. But the fact is, sight has something that is very powerfully resonating in a truth. That's what you say, seeing is believing. You saw it yourself. What does that mean in Aveda? It means that you could perceive God like Shmiya. And we're going to learn about this, because Shema Yisrael, remember, affects the animal soul. But then Teira is Riyah. Hamashpili Lires, the power of Riyah. So this is going to be relevant to the bigger picture. Riyah has that extra element. That's why we see the Asad Love. You look at chapter 36 in Tanya, he brings, I believe, 4 different verses that bring that in the future we'll see with our own eyes. There will no longer be a garment. And other verses, why is Brero? Why not Veshamu? They heard or perceived, because there's something about Riyah that adds a dimension. Today, the fact that we see Gashmias, and here's a very good example. You could be the most spiritual person. You could be walking down the street and you could be contemplating on Ayin Beis and enjoying it and doing it with tremendous pleasure. But then something comes your way that distracts you. Sight. You see a celebrity, or you see something else. We all know what the power of sight is. So no matter how much you're immersed, I'm not saying it's impossible to remain, to not be, it's possible, obviously, not to be distracted. But very, very often, something you see will throw you, because there's something about sight that seduces our senses more than any other sense. I'm not saying the other senses aren't powerful in their own way. But the bottom line is, so that's in Gashmis. Imagine if you could see Ruchnis like you see Gashmis, that it has the same type of resonating reality. That's what will be La'asad Lave. Today, Gashmis we see, and Ruchnis we hear about. La'asad Lave, we'll see Ruchnis and we'll hear about Gashmis. When I say here, there'll be Gashmis, but our experience of it will be more, not as powerful as the experience of sight. The story of Levi Yitzchak Badishever, where he once cried out to Hashem, may have been before Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. He said, a kunz. That's what he said, a kunz. A kunz means you did a trick, said to God. You gave your people, you gave them Gashmis to experience, and you write about Ruchnius in the books. About Gan Eden and Ruchnius, you write about in the books. Why don't you try changing the script? Write about Gashmis in the books, and let us experience Ruchnius, and you'll see how they behave. So that's the kunst you made. He's saying like as a complaint. Gashmis you made very tangible. Someone wakes up in the morning. They don't need to contemplate. They know if they're tired or they're hungry, and they know how they feel. Everything about the tangible empirical reality is right. We don't need any effort. Comes to spirituality, you have to say, okay, I'm going to say Moida Ani now. I have a neshama. I contemplate. Save mamal kalam, save kalam, less asar ponimene. So Levi Yitzchak Badisha was telling the Abish, they're very nice. You made Gashmis, I gave them on a silver platter, and Ruchnias they have to work on. Try the other way around. Give them Gan Eden as a tangible reality, and write about all the challenges of Elam Hazeh in a novel. Hashem didn't fully cooperate, but that's what he said to Hashem. So tremendous insight when you think about it, because what is reality? So we all begin reality is what I see. And how often people say, I don't know about God, about a soul. I don't see it. I don't hear it. I don't taste it. I don't touch it. I don't smell it. I can't measure it. I once told me, he said to me, I only believe in things like this I can count. He meant money. It's the only thing I know is real. It's real because your senses, the senses that are the sense experiences that we have are with physical senses. So going back to the point he's saying here is that bracha is meant to reveal that godliness should not just be a story or a theory or an abstract contemplation. It should be like you're seeing it with your eyes. Obviously, with the limits we still have today, but that's the objective and the goal. That's where he's going to. That's what he's explaining. I will explain more. So I do feel it's probably important to read inside because it's not really, even though there's a lot of details here, but it's not. It's very much part of the plot and the narrative of Ayin Beis. So we'll continue reading, but I will stop here and take any questions. Then we'll resume on Sunday.
Why
How's
is
the
it
connection? How's the connection been in the last?
a little better? I mean, the visual is still blurry, but the audio was basically fine. Thank God.
So one second, since you can't see me so clearly, how do you know it's me?
Well, it's Musa goof.
Okay.
Yeah, I had this question. I'm just been thinking this last line or the Inyan of that the bracha of those lo tuchel hanefesh she'es mahachil hislapshus beguf agashmi. The bracha is too involved b'choshech taivas ha'olam that the bracha can only, I guess, affect or with the ruach and the neshama of a person. And I'm trying to understand. I mean,
It doesn't
I guess
say it doesn't affect. Let me just clarify. It says it can't fully contain it. It does affect. It doesn't fully contain it, which makes sense. It's like the lower dimensions of the soul. Still in this world, because of the cheshech, is not fully, I'll call it engaged, even with the riyah of brachas. But he does say yisachid. So to some extent, it affects. It's just not fully as much as ruach and neshama. Just wanted to clarify the wording.
Well, that's
Maybe that
important.
answers your question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it does because this may not be related, but here comes the question. If I can spit it out. So certain brachas, like over food, for example, you say or whatever, it helps you connect with the ruchnius of the matter. But in general, the notion of a bracha, the notion of revealing that which is already here, it just needs to be uncovered, so to speak, brought into revelation. So you see, for example, a habdil, let's say people are not necessarily so good. It's always a question of like, why do good things happen to bad people? I don't want to say someone's a bad person, but like someone could be very, very rich and have tons of brachas and many healthy children and et cetera, et cetera. But people know this guy's not 100%. Like, and then you could see someone who's, let's say the opposite. It doesn't seem to have those particular blessings, but best person in the world, modest and smart and kind and love. Just they got it all but they just don't seem to have those brachas I mentioned before, material brachas. You say, well, okay, is that because the nefesh is not?
Not necessarily. We know the mystery. We don't know. I mean, you're touching upon now the question why good people suffer and bad people prosper. That's not really relevant here.
No, not really. I'm talking about a bracha. When you said talk about a bracha generally, there's one thing to say a bracha to connect yourself to God. Maybe that's all he's talking about. But there's also notion of a bracha, which is like, you should have many brachas. I want to bless you with this. You should have long life and good health and et cetera, et cetera. Success in all things material and spiritual. Those are brachas. So you're wishing that, say, upon someone who may not necessarily have the schus, the merit to have those things. So they get them anyways. Is that connected to this issue, this Inyan of the nefesh cannot contain it? So it's like the guy gets lucky, basically.
Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It could be. I didn't say it's definitely not, but it's not necessarily the only factor.
I guess the question is, why do people that are not very not spiritual at all, let's say, get brachas, even potentially, seemingly more than?
You see, what he's talking about here is the bracha we make when we do a mitzvah. We're not talking about people receiving blessings in life.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. Well, that's a very important distinction because I mentioned there's two different
he's
perceptions
talking
are
here about the chachamim or misakin. You
Uh-huh.
should make a brichus mitzvah. And when you do a mitzvah, you should make a blessing before you do the mitzvah. That's what he's specifically addressing. He's not just talking about general concept of a bracha.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that probably negates the question. Thank you.
I have a practical question. What about when we comfort the mourners? Is this a tefillah or bracha?
When we comfort the moon,
The Moors, those who have
Availi,
lost something.
Availus.
Yeah. When we
it's a
say
good question. I have to think about it. I'm not sure. You mean when we say Amokim Yanachem Eschem?
yes,
It's a good question. It's probably more of a blessing than a tefillah, but it could be a tefillah too. I never thought about it. I have to look into it.
after the class, can you help me with that?
I'll look into it. Yeah, I'll let you know what I find if I find anything for that matter. But yeah. Okay, so let me. We'll sign off now because I must do a few things. And oh boy, am I busy here? Wow.
Do we resume a regular class schedule until further notice?
Yeah, I could say next week up till unless Wednesday is Erev Rosh Hashanah. That's up to you guys. But Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is all good from my end. And
Okay.
Wednesday we could determine, and then of course Thursday, Friday is Yom Tov, is Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
So to that, I mean, till Sukkot, barring the holidays, we're talking about Friday, Erev Yom Kippur is no class and stuff like that. But right now, yes, next week until Wednesday.
Okay, thank you. Everybody have a good Shabbos. I want to go listen to Netanyahu speak to the UN.
Okay.
Good Shabbos, everybody.
Be well. Good Shabbos, everyone. Be
Bye.
back. See you later.
I
See
need
you on Sunday.
I need your, after the records stop, can you tell me something?
I can't because I have someone right now waiting for me. I'll have to be a little later. You can text me and we can talk that way.
No, it's just a few seconds.
Okay.